Leif sprang from sleep, blade in hand. A shadow moved near the door, the firelight throwing long arms across the shed walls. He shifted like a man who had known too many wars, calm, fast, ready. "Stay behind me," he whispered, voice taut. But Sunniva was already there, barefoot, hair wild, eyes sharp with worry. "You were hurt before," she said. "What if they came back?" His gaze hardened. "I said stay back." She didn't move. He threw the door wide. A soft bleat split the silence. A goat nosed through a fallen basket near the woodpile. Leif exhaled, shoulders lowering. "You worry too much," he muttered. Sunniva blinked, half relieved, half mortified. "Well, someone has to." He took a step toward her. "Protecting me with what? Your stubbornness?" A grin curled at his lips just before he kissed her. Slow this time, steady. She shivered, not from cold. "You're impossible," she murmured. "You're infuriating," he replied, but he stayed close. "I should check on Mother," she said gently. He nodded. "Go. I'll be here." Later that night, she returned. The moon hung low, silvering the snow. The shed door was open. She stepped inside and shut it behind her. Leif glanced up. "You're locking me in now? If you want to run, you'll have to climb through the roof," she said, slipping beneath the blanket beside him. He laughed, then wrapped her in his arms like something he never meant to lose again. The next morning was quiet. Rain whispered down the eaves. Sunniva invited him into the house. This time, he didn't resist. She handed him a cloth for his boots and stirred the pot, humming softly. He watched her from the table. The way she moved, barefoot across stone, as if nothing in the world needed fixing. He should have said something, should have told her the truth. About the girl back home, the one he was meant to marry, about the man he was sent to kill. But every time the words neared his mouth, he saw the peace in her face and swallowed them back. "You said you had something to tell me," she said, turning with the ladle. Leif stood slowly, crossed the floor, and brushed a curl from her brow. "That I'll stand by you," he murmured. "No matter what comes." He kissed her as if to seal it. They settled into rhythm. He mended tools, carried water, cared for her mother without being asked. Her mother smiled at him, never prying. Sunniva had told her only that he was a traveler, robbed on the road, taken in by kindness. By the end of the third week, she began to hear whispers. At the market, Sunniva passed two men outside the weaver's hut. "They say he's still alive," one whispered. "Who?" "The ghost of Threem's Reach, the captain's son, sent to kill Einar. Dead, more like. No one survives what they did to him." Sunniva felt her pulse shift. The words clawed into her ribs. That night, she found Leif at the fire, sharpening his blade. She meant to ask, to demand answers. But when he smiled at her, when he kissed her like she'd pulled him back from the edge, she couldn't bring herself to break the quiet. She went to bed with questions burning behind her ribs. Sometime after midnight, she woke to a crash, a thud, something heavy outside. She sat up, heart hammering. Before she could stand, a hand clamped over her mouth, rough, calloused, a blade pressed to her throat. Then, the door burst open. Leif flew in, blade gleaming. "Let her go!" he barked. The man holding her froze. His eyes widened. "Leif?" The tension snapped like a rope cut clean. The stranger's expression shifted, first confusion, then recognition, then a grin. "By the gods, we thought you were dead!" He dropped the blade and stepped back. Leif hesitated, eyes still hard, then sheathed his knife. The two embraced, old warriors reunited. Sunniva stood frozen, breath shallow. The stranger nodded toward her. "And this?" "She saved me," Leif said. The man gave her a long, curious look. "She's under my protection," Leif added. Sunniva stepped outside, needing air. The rain had softened to mist. The world felt different now, tilted. Leif joined her. "You didn't tell me who you were," she said. "I didn't want you to look at me like you are now." And how is that? Like you're trying to decide if you can still love me. She turned away. I never meant to love again, he said. His voice cracked. I was promised to someone back home. A shield maiden. Brave. Strong. We were to marry after my mission. The one to kill Einar? She asked. He nodded. I didn't finish it. Never got the chance. Maybe I didn't want to. What happened? I was captured, tortured, thrown to the sea. He looked at her fully now. They think I died with honor, but I washed up here. I found you. She stepped closer, eyes searching. And now I don't know who I am. Inside, his crew laughed by the fire, but outside they stood in silence. They'll leave soon, he said. But someone will tell my father. He'll send others, and next time they may not knock. That night, after Suneva's mother had gone to sleep and the fire dimmed low, voices stirred outside. A soft rap came at the door. Gunnar. We'll camp beneath the ridge, he said, nodding toward the woods. Too far to ride tonight. Come drink with us, brother. The men would see your face by firelight again. Leif gave a short nod. I'll be out shortly. Gunnar's eyes drifted past him, toward the hearth's glow and the figure waiting within. Don't take too long, he muttered, then vanished into the night. Leif turned to Suneva. Her eyes searched his. Will you be long? He stepped closer, brushed his knuckles against her cheek. They expect me to sit, to drink. That I can do, but only for a while. You don't owe them your sleep, she whispered. I owe them some truth, he replied, and with a final glance, he stepped into the cold. The men sat beneath a lean-to of pine branches, fire crackling, shadows leaping across their faces. They passed him a horn, already half drunk. Laughter came easy, but the looks they gave him were sharp, measuring. Gunnar leaned in. You've gone soft, he said low. I saw it, the way you look at her. Leif didn't deny it. He only drank and said, Don't wait up. Laughter followed him as he walked away, but none of it reached his back. Inside, the fire still breathed low. Suneva lay curled beneath the old wool blanket, eyes closed, but not asleep. When he returned, she shifted, just enough for him to slide beside her. No words, just warmth, quiet, and a silence they didn't yet know how to break. They drifted there, pressed into the hush of the world, until a knock shattered it, firm intent. Then the scrape of steel unsheathing, and everything that had been still turned. Dawn crept in slowly. A pale hush lay across the hills. The fire in the hearth reduced to faint glow and ash. Leif hadn't slept. He'd spent the night with Suneva curled into his chest, her breath soft, hand tucked against his ribs, like she'd known his heartbeat longer than he had. He watched her sleep, and in that quiet, with nothing but her warmth pressed to him, he realized the truth he'd been running from. He had never felt safer, never wanted to stay more, but he couldn't. He rose, without a sound, folding the blanket over her shoulders. She stirred once, but didn't wake. He let his fingers trail along her hair one last time, then turned away. His boots were already packed. The knife she'd once sharpened for him sat tucked into his belt. He hesitated, long enough to consider staying, long enough to imagine a life where men like him were allowed peace. Then he stepped into the cold. Outside, Gunnar waited, leaning against the fence, arms crossed. Didn't think you'd say goodbye, he muttered. Leif didn't meet his eyes. I couldn't. You love her. It wasn't a question. Leif nodded once, jaw tight. That's why I have to go. Gunnar exhaled. I'll tell her then? Leif flinched at the thought. Number leave her peace intact. Let her hate me if it keeps her safe. He mounted slowly. The frost still clung to the grass. The house behind him was quiet. No footsteps, no doors opening, no soft voice calling his name. As the hooves cut across the frozen earth, Leif looked back only once. Then, not again. For Suneva the morning felt wrong. she stirred to the cold side of the bed. The blanket still held his scent, but the warmth was fading. Her hand reached out blindly, finding only folded cloth and emptiness. She sat up slowly, her breath hitching. No fire in the hearth, no boots by the door, just quiet. She stepped outside barefoot. Frost bit her soles. The mist still curled low across the fields, like breath from a beast not yet fed. Her eyes searched the path down the hill. Nothing. Then she saw it. Hoofprints. Deep. Fresh. Headed north. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, she walked back inside. Slow. Steady. Sat by the hearth where he'd last sat, his cup untouched. Her hands shook as she reached for it. Still a trace of warmth inside. Still proof that he'd meant to drink. That he hadn't planned to leave. Or perhaps he hadn't planned to say goodbye. Her mother watched from the doorway but said nothing. Sunniva didn't speak either. She simply reached for the cloak Leif had left behind, clutched it to her chest, and then, finally, let herself fall. Not with sound, not with fury, but with a silence so deep it cracked something inside her. And outside, far in the woods, the wind howled as if mourning something neither gods nor men could put back together again. The rain had stopped by the time Leif reached the ridge. Mist clung low to the ground like breath on iron. Pine needles shimmered beneath a pale dawn, and his horse moved with the wary silence of one carrying more than just weight, carrying guilt. Leif didn't speak. He hadn't since he left her. Not when Gunnar called after him from behind the tree line. Not when the others hoisted their packs. Not when the cold wind stung his cheek like a slap from the gods. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. But inside, something twisted. Sunniva. Her name curled like smoke in his lungs. She'd trusted him, given him her body, her warmth, her silence in the dark. He'd kissed her forehead before leaving, watched the curve of her sleeping face as if carving it into memory. And then he'd done what cowards do. He'd left. No word, no note, just the scent of ash in the hearth and the sound of hooves in the frost. Bjarka waited for him just past the ravine. He'd seen the torchlight long before Leif arrived. "Took your time," Bjarka muttered. "Didn't think you'd come at all." Leif didn't answer. They rode for hours without a word. The cliffs rose sharp around them, the land more wolf than man. Leif's cloak still smelled faintly of herbs and bread, and her. Every time he shifted in the saddle, it clung to him like shame. He thought of her face when she'd first touched his scars. How she never winced. How she whispered, "I see you," like it was the most dangerous thing she could do. Bjarka caught his glance once. "You're quieter than I remember." Leif grunted. "You remember the wrong version of me." They made camp beneath a crooked birch, where the stars broke through the clouds in strips. Leif didn't sleep. Instead, he stared at the fire until it burned patterns behind his eyes. And when he finally laid back on the earth, he dreamed of her, not in pieces, but in one unbearable whole. Would she forgive him? Would she hate him more for leaving, or for the silence he left behind? He woke before dawn, with frost in his beard and a hollow in his chest, and the road ahead still led only to reckoning. When they reached the gates of the stronghold, a true Viking holdfast carved into the stone cliffs and braced with timber older than memory, Leif dismounted alone. The guards looked stunned. Word passed like lightning. Some lowered their eyes, others stared. He passed them all without a word. The Jarl stood at the high steps, arms crossed over a broad chest, grizzled beard braided down the middle. He didn't speak until Leif was 10 paces away. "The dead walk now?" Leif stopped. "I didn't die. You vanished. You failed." The Jarl's voice was rough as old rope. "You were sent to kill Einar. Instead, you vanished. You didn't even send word. I was captured. For months, they thought I was dead. They threw me into the sea. And yet you breathe. The Jarl stepped forward. "You were promised to Eldris. Do you know what that alliance meant? What it still means?" "I remember," Leif said quietly. Footsteps approached. Eldris, hair braided like a crown, shoulders squared like a warrior. She didn't speak at first, just stared at him with eyes that searched for something that might not be there anymore. Then finally, a whisper. "You could have come back." "I wanted to." "Then why didn't you?" Leif couldn't answer. Eldris's voice cracked, not with sorrow, but fury. "I nearly drowned trying to save your sword. I carried it back to the ship. I wept for you. I prayed. And now you return with no wounds, no explanation, and no loyalty. I didn't plan this." "No," she spat. "You just found another hearth, one that asked less of you." Leif looked at the Jarl. His father's jaw was clenched, gaze cold. "If you dishonor her," he said, "you dishonor me. This is your blood, your legacy. I'm still your son." "Are you?" the Jarl growled. "Then act like it. Choose." 6 months. That's how long he stayed. Not out of loyalty, but out of duty. Out of confusion. The Jarl, his father, spoke to him only when needed, and even then, with words that held more weight than warmth. Eldris was colder still. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply trained harder, rode farther, and made sure her silence struck louder than steel ever could. Leif took up his old routines, joined the drills, sat in war councils, fletched arrows and sharpened blades with the others. But he was always slightly off rhythm, like a man dancing to a song only he could hear. Every fire he sat beside, every feast he forced down. He wondered if Sunniva was sleeping, if she'd forgiven him, if she'd burned the cloak he left behind. At night, he'd wake in a sweat, dreaming of her laugh, her touch, the way she'd reach for his hand without speaking. He didn't tell anyone, not even Bjarka, that his heart had never truly returned from that northern village. He watched Eldris from a distance, wondering if she hated him, if she pitied him, or worse, understood him. Her pride wouldn't let her break, but Leif saw the crack forming each time she passed him without a glance. By the end of the 6th month, even the warriors began to whisper that he was no longer fit for the sea, that the frost had done something to him, that maybe love had ruined the fiercest son of Vestfold. Leif heard it all and said nothing. Until one quiet afternoon, when the clouds hung low and the long hall smelled of smoke and rain, he stood before his father and Eldris, not as the Jarl's son, not as a warrior, but as a man bearing his own shame. It wasn't just longing that drove him. It was guilt. It was the ache of unfinished truth. "I have to return," he said, voice steady, though his hands clenched at his sides. "To her, to Sunniva." The Jarl's brow darkened like a storm building. "What for? You made your choice when you stayed. You made another when you came back." Leif met his gaze. "I left her in silence, without truth, without honor. She gave me everything, and I gave her nothing but doubt." His eyes flicked to Eldris. "And now, with the alliance restored, with our marriage ahead, I have to face her. She deserves that." "You will go to break her?" Eldris asked, eyes narrowed but voice low. "Or to cling to what you lost?" Leif's answer came like frost cracking wood. "To be honest, to give her what she was never given, a reason." The Jarl's voice boomed. "And you think that makes you a man?" "No," Leif answered, "but I'll not marry with her ghost at my back." Silence followed. Heavy. Final. Then the Jarl, face like granite, said only, "Then ride, but don't expect mercy when the dead don't stay buried." It took him nearly a week to reach the valley beyond the old pine pass. The road was long, but not unfamiliar. He'd crossed it once as a ghost. This time, He traveled like a man burdened by truth. At night, he made camp beneath the stars, the fire low, the silence heavy. He bathed in the glacial streams and let the wind bite him clean. His horse drank beside him. The path twisted through thick snow and craggy hills, but Leif had known harder trails. He hunted when the rations thinned, washed his tunic in a river's bend, and let it dry in the morning frost. A Viking knew how to survive. This, at least, had not changed. But it wasn't the cold that weighed him down. It was the words he had yet to speak. The village hadn't changed, but the silence felt different. Leif rode alone this time, no warband, no promise of battle, just the cold weight of his oath pressing like armor that didn't fit. He dismounted where the earth still bore the faint indent of his last departure, a ghost retracing his own steps. Children ran past, not recognizing him. A woman hanging herbs paused, her eyes widened, then narrowed. She didn't speak, but her mouth pressed thin as she turned away. He walked slowly, past the goat shed, past the well, toward the house where laughter once waited. The door creaked open before he knocked, and there she was, Sunneva. But not as he left her. She stood taller, stronger somehow, but paler, eyes guarded, and the swell beneath her cloak undeniable. His mouth opened, then closed. She didn't flinch, didn't weep. She only looked at him and said, "You came back." Leif nodded. "I needed to tell you." She raised a hand. "I know." A beat passed, then another. He swallowed. "Is it mine?" Her voice was soft, like winter falling. "I don't share my bed with ghosts." Behind her, the hearth crackled, no warmer than her eyes. And Leif, warrior of the north, heir of a jarl, slayer of men, felt the only battle he'd ever truly lost was already over.
My son will marry whom I choose. None will question it.
I woke to find the dawn was dry. No trace of footprints, not goodbye. Just silence where your promise lay, and cold that never went away. I told no soul the way you left, the empty bed, the hollow breath, the cloak you dropped, I wear no more. I buried it behind the door. You chose the sea, I chose the land. You left me here with blood and hands. I built a world from broken stone while you were gone. I carried us alone. I worked until the hours bled. I boiled roots beside the shed, and when they asked whose child I bore, I smiled and said he's just at war. But wars are not just fought with blades, they live in words we never say. And though your name still burns my tongue, I've learned to breathe without your lungs. You chose the sea, I chose the land. You left me here with blood and hands. I kept your child through fire and bone while you were gone. I and I stood still. You chased a crown, I climbed a hill, and though you kneel, though you atone, this is my life. I carried us along.